Right now, I do want to get you right into some of the big stories that we are covering here at this hour. And of course, a big story coming in out of Iran as Iran's supreme leader this morning now calling President Trump a, quote, criminal, saying he's, quote, guilty of slander and is involved in the sedition playing out in Iran. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei posting a long thread, a rant, so to speak, on X, referring to the nationwide protests against the regime that have died down over the past couple days. Now, in part, the supreme leader wrote here, from the beginning of the Islamic Revolution until today, the U.S. has lost its dominance over Iran, and they want to bring Iran under their military, political, and economic dominance again. The U.S. president sent a message to the seditionists saying he would support them and provide military support. In other words, the U.S. president himself was involved in the sedition. These are criminal acts. He went on to say, quote, the U.S. president introduced the groups who committed acts of vandalism, arson, and murdered people as, quote, the Iranian nation. He uttered an appalling slander against the Iranian people. We find the U.S. president guilty for this slander. The remarks come as President Trump on Friday was asked about potential U.S. military action against Iran, saying Iranian officials told him that the killing of protesters was over.
As you know, Iran canceled the hanging of over 800 people. They were going to hang over 800 people yesterday, and I greatly respect the fact that they canceled that.
Again, those are some brief remarks there from President Trump outside of the White House on Friday. Right now, though, you're looking at some of the video of the protests in several cities across Iran earlier this week, including the capital of Tehran. 3 weeks of protest appear to be winding down overall, as activists there say the death toll is upwards of 3,000, but other experts say that number could actually be significantly higher. I want to talk about all of this and what we can expect in the future. So let's bring in Javed Ali, Associate Professor of Practice at the University of Michigan's Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. Now, he's worked in the Defense Intelligence Agency, Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI, just to name a few. Javed Ali, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, as always.
Josh, nice to be with you as always as well this Saturday morning.
Yeah, and I did want to start by kind of getting your reaction to those statements there from Iran's supreme leader, again, posting a thread or essentially a rant there on social media. To read that, what kind of goes through your mind? What do you take from it?
So we've seen the past few weeks these terrible images coming out of Iran and the brutal and ferocious Iranian response to put down the protesters. And we've also heard at the same time this very belligerent rhetoric from Iranian senior leaders, to include the supreme leader and other officials there, that have been defiant and have vowed to do even more. And these kind of statements that directly are targeted against President Trump, that may only sort of strengthen President Trump's resolve, the administration's resolve to actually follow through on military operations.
And when you look at this a little bit closer, what maybe political, military, diplomatic factors are really going to ultimately shape what happens here? Again, we don't know exactly what is going to happen. We don't have any of those answers just yet, but what can we look at as far as that goes?
Yeah, Josh, there's so much to unpack there. I'll just try to be brief on a few of those angles. On the military side, based on a lot of media reporting the past few days, it does look like the U.S. is trying to position even more military capabilities and assets and resources into the Persian Gulf region and perhaps surrounding area. Now, if President Trump today ordered the military to conduct some set of strikes in that many of options that were presented to him over the past couple of weeks, I'm sure the U.S. could probably do that right now without even the additional resources that may be coming into the region or into the theater. But that may be something that is pushing the military timeline out a little bit. So that's one part. On the diplomatic side, it does seem over the past week that other countries in the region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, others were suggesting to the White House or President Trump, maybe now is not the time to engage in these operations, even if the U.S. could have done it in the more recent timeframe, just because they're concerned about the potential repercussions in the region and perhaps even in their countries. And there was some media reporting that even Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel was cautioning perhaps restraint on the sort of the threat of near-term military operations. So there seems to be a lot on the diplomatic side. And then on the political side here inside the United States, this is something the White House is going to have to think through. Even if the U.S. does go forward, whether it's a week from now or 2 weeks from now, what will the U.S. Or how will the U.S. public react to that? Can President Trump get any congressional authorization to launch military attacks, or can the president do it now under standing authority as commander in chief under Article 2 of the Constitution? So these are just some of the many issues that I still think are on the table going forward.
And the head, and you mentioned, by the way, Israel, the head of the Mossad spy agency there from Israel was actually in the U.S. yesterday, according to Axios. They say that there was a meeting there all related to Iran. Does that tell us anything about really the situation here as it is playing out?
If that reporting is accurate, that to me is another indicator that there is still a high level of concern about what is happening in Iran, and having the head of Israel's Mossad coming to the United States is to share whatever insights Israel is gaining from their intelligence capabilities, and then sharing that with partners here in the United States. Central Intelligence Agency is the natural partner for the Mossad here, and perhaps other parts of our U.S. intelligence community. And does that intelligence picture, whatever it looks like from both the U.S. and the Israeli side, does it give more momentum for the potential for military operations, or does that intelligence picture show maybe there was a window, but it passed because the protests have subsided and the Iranian forces involved in those brutal attacks inside the country have sort of pulled back, and there's a different thinking in the Iranian senior leadership circles right now. So I'm sure it was a fascinating series of conversations between the head of Mossad and his counterparts when he was here yesterday.
We, of course, know that groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, the terror groups there over in the Middle East, are associated with Iran. Do we expect that they could potentially play any role in a situation there if there were to be a U.S. strike on Iran and then there's some kind of retaliation? Could Hamas, Hezbollah, other terror groups there kind of jump in as well?
Well, this was an issue, Josh, if your viewers remember from last summer, when Israel launched its 12-day campaign against Iran and hit Iran very hard. And then the U.S., with Operation Midnight Hammer, hit the 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. And even last summer, all the groups you just mentioned and others, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, none of them, for the most part, really did much to come to Iran's assistance in the aftermath of the attacks against Iran. And that was now more than 6 months ago. All those groups are even in a weaker position now than they were in 2025. So even if the U.S. and or Israel engage in another round of attacks against Iran, I don't see those groups doing much to conduct attacks or operations against Israel. The U.S., I mean, they might try, but again, they have a much limited capability, and they're more in survival mode or in a defensive mode versus trying to join the fight and assist Iran that perhaps those groups could have done in years past. I just don't think they have much capability right now.
And the final question that I always ask you, as we do see everything kind of happen there in the Middle East, over in Iran, what should we be watching for in the coming hours, days, and even potentially weeks?
So I think we're going to have to continue and watch the statements from both the Iranian side. We've already seen one very belligerent one that you showed at the beginning of this clip from the Supreme Leader. What is going to come out of the White House and President Trump? So there's the rhetorical aspect of this, and then there's the operational aspect. What more can the U.S. military do to bring more capability and more resources into the region beyond what's there already? Will there be more ordered departures of personnel or families from other military bases or countries in the region, like there was at Al Udeid Air Base last week? And those are just some of the indicators, I think, of what may happen in the coming days or weeks.
And it is interesting also because there's another statement that's floating around on social media, not quite confirmed that it is legitimate, but someone with the royal family, I believe, over in Qatar saying that They could potentially get rid of that base altogether, that it's not needed, and that the U.S. is a tenant. So, of course, we're working to figure out if there is any truth to that or if it's just one of the fake statements that is circulating there on social media. Javed Ali, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Anything we missed that you want to make sure to add before I let you go here?
And we covered a lot of ground today, Josh, and I think we're all just going to have to wait and see how events play out in the near term.
For sure. Thank you again, Javed Ali there over at the University of Michigan. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Josh.